Chapter 2. I crawled deeper into the treehouse. It wasn't much more than a 5-by-5-foot cube. Even Jared couldn't stand up straight in there, but I loved it. There was one opening to crawl into, then a tiny window on the opposite wall. I placed an old step stool in the corner to act as a desk for the candle, and a little rug that was so old it was barely better than sitting on the slates. It wasn't much, but it was my haven. Our haven. Please don't call me gorgeous. First my mom, then me, now you. It's getting on my nerves. By the way, Aspen was looking at me. I could tell I wasn't helping my I'm not pretty case. He smiled. I can't help it. You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. You can't hold it against me for saying it the only time I'm allowed to. He reached up and cupped my face, and I looked deep into his eyes. That was all it took. His lips were on mine, and I couldn't think about anything anymore. There was no selection, no miserable family, no Ilya itself. There were only Aspen's hands on my back, pulling me closer. Aspen's breath on my cheeks. My fingers went to his black hair, still wet from his shower. He always took showers at night, and tangled themselves into a perfect little knot. He smelled like his mother's homemade soap. I dreamed about that smell. We broke apart, and I couldn't help but smile. His legs were propped open wide so that I sat sideways between them, like a kid who needed cradling. Sorry I'm not in a better mood. It's just that we got this stupid notice in the post today. Ah, yes, the letter, Aspen sighed. We got 2. Of course, the twins had just turned 16. Aspen studied my face as he spoke. He did that when we were together, like he was recommitting my face to memory. It had only been over a week. We both got anxious when it was more than a few days. And I looked him over too. No caste excluded. Aspen was by far the most attractive guy in town. He had dark hair and green eyes, and the smile that made you think he had a secret. He was tall, but not too tall. Thin, but not too thin. I noticed in the dim light that there were tiny bags under his eyes. No doubt he'd been working late all week. His black t-shirt was worn to threads in several places, just like the shabby pair of jeans he wore almost every day. If only I could sit and patch them up for him. That was my great ambition. Not to be Ilya's princess, to be Aspen's. It hurt me to be away from him. Some days I went crazy wondering what he was doing. And when I couldn't handle it, I practiced music. I really had Aspen to thank for me being the musician that I was. He drove me to distraction, and that was bad. Aspen was a 6. 6s were servants, and only a step up from 7s. And they were better educated and trained for indoor work. Aspen was smarter than anyone knew, and devastatingly handsome, but was atypical for a woman to marry down. A man from a lower casket, to ask for your hand, but it was rare to get a yes. And when anyone married into a different casket, they had to fill out paperwork and wait for something like 90 days before any of the other legal things he needed could be done. I heard more than one person say it was to give people a chance to change their mind. So us being this personal and out well past Ilya's curfew, we could both get in serious trouble. Not to mention the hell I'd get from my mother. But I loved Aspen, and I loved Aspen for nearly 2 years. And he loved me. As he sat there stroking my hair, I couldn't imagine entering the selection. How do you feel about it? The selection, I mean, I asked. Okay, I guess. He's got to find a girl somehow, poor guy. I could hear the sarcasm, and I really wanted to know his opinion. Aspen. Okay. Well, part of me thinks it's kind of sad. Doesn't the prince date? I mean, can he seriously not get anyone? If they try to wed the princesses to other princes, why can't they do the same for him? There's got to be some royal out there good enough for him. I don't get it. So there's that. But then, he sighed, part of me thinks it's a good idea. It's exciting. He's going to fall in love in front of everyone. And I like that someone gets a happily ever after. All that. Anybody could be our next queen. It's kind of hopeful. Makes me think that I could have a happily ever after too. His fingers were tracing my lips. Those green eyes searched deep in my soul, and I felt that spark of connection that I'd only ever had with him. I wanted our happily ever after too. So you're encouraging the twins to enter then? I asked. Yes, I mean, we've all seen the prince from time to time. He looks like a nice enough guy. A snot, no doubt, but friendly. And the girls are so eager, it's funny to watch. They were dancing in the house when I came home today, and no one can deny it would be good for the family. Mom's hopeful because we have 2 entries from the house instead of 1. That was the first good news about this horrible competition. I couldn't believe I'd been so self-absorbed that I hadn't even thought about Aspen's sisters. If one of them won. Aspen, do you realize what that would mean if Camber or Cecilia won? He closed his hold tighter around me, his lips brushing my forehead. One hand moved up and down my back. It's all I thought about today, he said. The gritty sound of his voice pushed out every other thought. All I wanted was for Aspen to touch me, kiss me. That's exactly where the night would have gone. But his stomach growled and snapped me out of it. Oh, hey, I brought us a snack, I said lightly. Oh, yeah? I could tell he was trying not to sound excited, but some of his eagerness came through. You'll love this chicken. I made it. I found my little bundle and brought it to Aspen, who, in his merit, nibbled it all slowly. I took one bite of the apple so he would feel like it was for us, but then I set it down and let him have the rest. Where meals were a worry at my house, they were a disaster at Aspen's. He had much steadier work than we did, but got paid significantly less. There was never enough food for his family. He was the oldest of 7, and in the same way I had stepped up to help as soon as I could, Aspen had stepped aside. He passed his share of little food as they had down to his siblings, and to his mom, who was always tired from working. His dad had died 3 years ago. Aspen's family depended on him for almost everything. I watched with satisfaction as he licked the spices from the chicken off his fingers and tore into the bread. I couldn't imagine when I'd eaten last. You're such a good cook. You're going to make someone very fat and happy one day, he said, his mouth half full with a bite of apple. I'm going to make you fat and happy. You know that. To be fat. We laughed and he told me about life since last time I'd seen him. He'd done some clerical work for one of the factories, and I was going to carry him through next week too. His mom had finally gotten into the routine of house cleaning for a few of the 2s in our area. The twins were both sad because their mom had made them start their after-school drama club so they could work more. I'm going to see if I can pick up some work on Sundays to make a little bit more money. I hate for them to give up something they love so much, he said with hope, like he really could do it. Aspen Leaguer, don't you dare! You are too hard as it is. Aw, Mur, he whispered in my ear. It gave me a chill bumps. You know how Camber and Cecilia are. They need to be around people. They can't be cooped up cleaning and writing all the time. It's just not in their nature. But it's not fair for them to expect you to do it all, Aspen. I know exactly how you feel about your sisters, but you need to watch out for yourself. If you really love them, you'll take better care of their caregiver. Don't you worry about a thing, Mer. I think there are some good things on the horizon. I wouldn't be doing it forever, but he would, because his family would always need money. Aspen, I know you could do it, but you're not a superhero. You can't expect to be able to provide everything for everyone you love. You can't do everything. We were quiet for a moment. I hoped he was taking my words to heart, realizing that if he didn't slow down, he'd wear himself out. It wasn't anything new for a 6, 7, or an 8 just to die of exhaustion. I couldn't bear that. I pressed myself closer to his chest, trying to get the image of it out of my head. America? Yes, I whispered. Are you going to enter the selection? No, of course not. I don't want anyone to think I'd ever consider marrying some stranger. I love you, I said earnestly. You want to be a 6? Always hungry, always worried? He asked. I could hear the pain in his voice, but also the genuine question. If I had to choose between sleeping in a palace with people waiting on me or a 3-room apartment with Aspen's family, which one did I really want? Aspen, we'll make it. We're smart. We'll be fine. I willed it to be true. You know that's not how it'll be, Mer. I still have to support my family. I'm not the abandoning type. I squirmed a little in his arms. And if we had kids, when we have kids, and we'll just be careful about it. Who says we'll have more than 2? You know that's not something we can control. I could hear the anger building in his voice. I couldn't blame him. If you were wealthy enough, you could regulate having a family. If you were a 4 or worse, they left you to fend for yourselves. This had been the subject of many arguments for us over the last 6 months, when we seriously started trying to find a way to be together. Children were the wild card. The more you had, the more there were to work. But then again, so many hungry mouths. We fell quiet again, both unsure of what to say. Aspen was a passionate person. He tended to get a little carried away in an argument. He'd gotten better about catching himself before he got too angry. And I knew that's what he was doing now. I didn't want him to worry or be upset. I really thought we could handle it. If we just planned for everything, we could make it. Through everything we couldn't. Maybe I was too optimistic. Maybe I was just too far in love. But I really believe that anything Aspen and I wanted badly enough, we could make happen. I think you should do it, he said suddenly. Do what? Enter the selection. I think you should do it. I glared at him. Are you out of your mind? Mert listened to me. His mouth was right to my ear. It wasn't fair. He knew this distracted me. When his voice came, it was breathy and slow, like he was saying something romantic, though he was suggesting anything but. If you had the chance for something better than this, and you didn't take it because of me, I'd never forgive myself. I couldn't stand it. I let out a breath and a quick huff. It's so ridiculous. Think of the thousands of girls entering. I wouldn't even get picked. If you won't get picked, then why does it matter? His hands were rubbing up and down my arms now. I couldn't argue when he did that. All I want is for you to enter. I just want you to try. And if you go, then you go. And if you don't, then at least I won't have to beat myself up for holding you back. But I don't love him, Aspen. I don't even like him. I don't even know him. No one knows him. That's the thing, though. Maybe you would like him. Aspen, stop. I love you. And I love you. He kissed me slowly to make his point. And if you love me, you'll do this so I won't go crazy wondering what if. When he made it about him, I didn't stand a chance, because I couldn't hurt him. I was doing everything I could to make his life easier. And I was right. There was absolutely no way I'd get chosen. So I should just go through the motions, appease everyone, and when I didn't get picked, everyone would drop it. Please, he breathed into my ear, sending chills down my body. Fine, I whispered. I'll do it. But know now that I don't want to be some princess. All I want is to be your wife. He stroked my hair. You will be. It must have been the light or the lack thereof, because I swore his eyes welled up when he said that. Aspen had been through a lot, and I had seen him cry only once, when they whipped his brother in the square. Little Jeremy had stolen some fruit off a cart in the market. An adult would have had a brief trial, and then, depending on the value that was stolen, either been thrown in jail or sentenced to death. Jeremy was only 9, so he was beaten. Aspen's mom did not have the money to take him to a proper doctor, so Jeremy had scars up and down his back from the incident. That night, I waited by my window to see if Aspen would climb up the treehouse. When he did, I snuck out to him. He cried in my arms for an hour about how if only he'd worked harder, if only he'd done better, Jeremy wouldn't have had to steal. How it was so unfair that Jeremy had to hurt because Aspen had failed. It was agonizing because it wasn't true. But I couldn't tell him that. He wouldn't hear me. Aspen carried the needs of everyone he loved on his back. Somehow, miraculously, I became one of those people. So I made my load as light as I could. Would you sing for me? Give me something good to fall asleep to? I smiled. I loved giving him songs, so I settled in close and sang a quiet lullaby. He let me sing a few minutes before his fingers started moving absently below my ear. He pulled the neck of my shirt wide open and kissed along my neck and ears. Then he pulled up my short sleeve and kissed as far down my arm as he could reach. It made my breath hitch. Almost every time I sang, he did this. I think he enjoyed the sound of my raspy breathing more than the singing itself. Before long, we were tangled together on the dirty, thin rug. Aspen pulled me on top of him, and I brushed his scraggly hair with my ears. Hypnotized by the feel, he kissed me feverishly and hard. I felt his fingers dig into my waist, my back, my hips, my thighs. I was always surprised that he didn't leave little finger-shaped bruises all over me. We were cautious, always stopping shy of the things we really wanted. As if breaking curfew wasn't bad enough. Still, whatever our limitations were, I couldn't imagine anyone in Ilya had more passion than we did. I love you, America Singer. As long as I live, I'll love you. There was some deep emotion in his voice, and it caught me off guard. I love you, Aspen. You'll always be my prince. He kissed me until the candle burnt itself out. It had been a few hours and my eyes were heavy. Aspen never worried about his sleep, but he always concerned about mine, so I wearily climbed down the ladder, taking my plate and my penny. When I sang, Aspen ate it up and loved it. From time to time, when he had anything at all, he'd give me a penny to pay for my song. If he managed to scratch up a penny, I wanted him to give it to his family. No doubt they needed every last one. But then having these pennies, since I couldn't bear to spend them, was like having a reminder of everything Aspen was willing to do for me, everything I meant to him. Back in my room, I pulled out my tiny jar of pennies out from its hiding spot and listened to the happy sound of the newest one hitting its neighbors. I waited for 10 minutes, watching out the window until I saw Aspen's shadow climb down and run down the back road. I stayed awake a little while longer, thinking of Aspen and how much I loved him, and how it felt to be loved by him. I felt special, priceless, irreplaceable. No queen on any throne could possibly feel more important than I did. I fell asleep with that thought securely etched in my heart.